Hello and welcome to a live stream. I wanted to do one earlier today. I did quite a bit of writing in terms of getting chapters ready to sign off yesterday, but didn't do the final bit, which is the bit I tend to do when I'm live streaming. So I didn't actually get to do the actual live stream, the actual sign off. And then today, I was going to do it earlier. For some reason, last night I didn't sleep very well. Now, bear in mind, last night was the first night where my bedroom's been a decent temperature. I'd walked loads. I'd done like 6 or 7 miles walking yesterday. I was genuinely tired and couldn't sleep. And then today has been a bit of a washout. But what I am determined not to do is lose it completely. So I have in front of me 3 printed chapters of Empress of the Trees, chapters 37, 38 and 39. And it's got some fairly important, well, it's basically the climax of the story. There's chapter 40 left, which is the last chapter of this segment of the book. And then I've just got the final 3 chapters, which was meant to be an epilogue, but there was too much I wanted to squeeze into one epilogue, and it ended up about 24,000 words. It would have been massive, about 70 or 80 pages. Anyway, let's send a text test message. As is usual, recently I've decided not to just send the word test. I've decided to send some lyrics. Oh, it's working. Anybody watching knows what those lyrics are. Right. Being me, didn't time this properly. So I've been boiling, trying to make coffee. So I'm just going to, it's all ready. I'm just going to quickly make a coffee. Warm the cup first because you don't want a cold cup of coffee. Oh dear. So yeah, as soon as my coffee's ready, which won't be long, I will get straight on with my editing. So some crucial stuff in these chapters. It's the end of the story. I have a funny feeling I'm going to have to refill the water reservoir, so bear with me. Not this time, it would appear. That's good. There we go. Now I should have done that whilst I was during the countdown, but as usual I didn't get around to things. So I should get round to it now. Well, I've done it now. So nice cup of coffee in my Starbucks Japan mug. Nice. Right, let's just crack on, shall we? I've got 3 chapters prepared here. Whether I'll do 3 chapters or not, I don't know. We'll just do at least one and then see how I feel. Right. Helps, of course, if you open the file, Andrew, Richard, whatever my name is. Okay, right. So, yes. Oh, one thing I forgot to say was if you would like to talk to me, obviously through Twitch, there is a text messaging. There is you can send me messages live through the Twitch platform. They will appear on the screen here, and I will interact with them as soon as I notice them. If I'm deep down in a piece of work, it might be a moment or two. And also, you can actually use the QR code on the top right corner of the screen to look at my social media. One of the social media platforms that is there is Discord. And I'm going to quickly turn on, so if you go into my Discord server, towards the bottom there is a section called Voice Channels, and there's one called Twitch Streams Live, which is, after that noise, now open. So you can actually verbally converse with me on here. The upside is you can say exactly what you want without having to type it. The downside is it will be on the live stream. So please, please only do that if that's what you want. Okay, right. The other quickly thing I'll explain is I'm working from paper, so unfortunately, although I have got the text displayed on the screen, it won't be scrolling through as I read it. I will only scroll down if I need to make an alteration. So, of which hopefully I won't have to make very many on this because this is the sign-off. So, Chapter 37, Deadlock. I'm very sorry, Mr. Oakley. As you'll no doubt understand, I cannot offer you any further support or protection. Oakley glared at his mobile phone. The words Derek Cockerell Wright were displayed in large white letters, and the phone was set hands-free so that the people around him could hear the conversation. Oakley was standing in the arboretum close to the tree with Ronnie and Marianne nearby. Two men were on duty by the door, Vickers and one of the Arbor troops. Vickers still carried his army-issue weapon, but had changed out of his uniform. Instead, he sported a pair of black jeans, a t-shirt and a dark grey hoodie. Carruthers had dashed off to move his car from the lay-by where the coach had left them what felt weeks ago to the car park just outside the east door. I understand, Prime Minister, said Oakley. You should know that a few hours ago, Private Vickers, one of the ambassador's protection team, prevented her from being murdered by 3 other people from that team, including their commanding officer, Lance Corporal Barrera. I was worried that might happen, replied Cockerell Wright. I would ask that we try and do some kind of prisoner exchange this morning before I visit the Queen and formally resign. Oakley shook his head. Prisoner exchange? They're dead, Prime Minister. They didn't leave Vickers a choice. Oh dear. And what of the others? One died at the hands of Tucker's mob a few days ago. Vickers and Dr. Matthews swear they will never wear their uniforms again. I'm sorry, replied the Prime Minister. I thought that giving Barrera orders with instructions that they cannot be countermanded would be enough to prevent something like this from happening. It seems that Barrera's sense of self-preservation kicked in, said Oakley coldly. Unlike whatever Cockerell Wright had been about to say died on his lips. I understand the scale and consequences of what is happening now, Mr. Oakley. I mean, I knew before, but I was unable to take in the enormity of it. At first I thought we could achieve those directives within the timescales. Then the suicide started. For a while I dismissed them as collateral damage, believing that we could still save the majority of the population. I still think that we could have made this work, Mr. Oakley, if we'd simply been given more time. Idrisil just did not understand that the timescales she tried to impose upon us were impossible. We had to give people time to get used to the changes. When I realised that Carl Tucker was going to win the election and that most of what we were trying to put in place was going to be reversed, I finally understood what we had failed to prevent. I have a couple of last-ditch tricks up my sleeve to prevent Tucker from completely returning things to how they were before, but they won't be enough. There will be no election in 5 years. There will be nothing. I see that now. I might just swap those 2 little moments around. So instead of saying there will be no election in 5 years, there will be nothing. I see that now. I'm going to put there will be no election in 5 years. I see that now. There will be nothing. Oakley glanced up at those around him and took in their concerned looks. He switched off the phone's external speaker and raised it to his ear. Once I resign, I'll return to my country estate, and I will say goodbye to my family, continued Cockerell Wright. None of them, us, are, continued. I don't know, it doesn't need that, that's just repetition. Don't know how I didn't spot that before. Once I resign, and I will return to my country estate, and let's do the I will as well, and say goodbye to my family. Continued Cockerell Wright. None of them, us, are. His voice faltered before I completed the sentence. None of us are going to suffer. Oakley shook his head. You should know that I've been informed that the Ragnarok faction are the victors in the tree's internal dispute. My guess is that oxygen production will stop shortly if it hasn't already. I had some tests done this morning. None of the trees we examined are producing oxygen. Some are even emitting carbon dioxide and absorbing the oxygen around them. That should speed things up nicely, muttered Oakley. There was a long pause on the call. I will arrange to have Private Adrian Vickers and Dr. Carl Matthews demobbed immediately, said Cocklewright eventually. Thank you, replied Oakley. We are making a last-ditch attempt to convince Idris to allow some survivors, but we are running out of time to implement it. I wish you luck. I'm sorry for everything, Mr. Oakley. Cocklewright's voice quietened. I have many regrets. One of those is what I will have to do to ensure that my family, my children and grandchildren, do not have to watch their loved ones die around them. I'm terrified about how my youngest granddaughter would cope if she outlasted the rest of us, even by a few minutes. That will not happen. Oakley's stomach tightened. I'm sorry, Derek. As am I, replied the Prime Minister, before he ended the call. Oakley put his phone back in his jacket pocket. Tucker has announced that everything is going to be switched back on. Television, internet, everything. It won't be long before someone works out that oxygen levels are dropping. He paused, taking in a few breaths. I think it's already getting a little harder to breathe. Mariam stepped forward. Forward? Yeah. Marion stepped forward to them standing beside him. Maybe Tucker will choose not to tell anyone. Whatever Carl Tucker decides, with the internet switched back on, rumours and half-facts will spread like wildfire. It will be chaos. Social order is going to completely collapse. Supermarkets are going to be emptied, which is ironic because if the oxygen depletes as quickly as it looks like it's going to, there's going to be more... Motor than? There's going to be more than enough food to last until Judgment Day. Marion nodded. I know. They glanced over to Crothers and Ronnie, who were still taking turns to try and communicate with the tree. Claire was lying back on the surgical bed, connected in case they succeeded. Marianne pointed over to Ronnie, who chose that moment to yawn. Ronnie needs a break. They said she's exhausted, physically and emotionally. Oakley nodded and gestured towards Vickers on the door. So is Adrian. He refuses to stand down too. Do you think he's fit to be on duty, given what he just did? Ronnie tried to talk him into taking a short rest. He was having none of it. Marianne nodded and walked across to Vickers, who glanced up at them, his eyes cold. Can I help you? Are you okay? Vickers nodded slowly. I don't think I've had time to process everything yet. I need to stay busy. I'm glad you and Ronnie found each other. Vickers looked up at them and the smile vanished. It was just a moment. It's not like we have a future. None of us do. Have you talked to her? Vickers shook his head. We haven't had time. Marianne smiled. And if there was a future, would you want to spend it with her? Vickers' face went slightly red. Let's get there first. He looked away from Marianne. There's too much else going on. She's under enough pressure at the moment. I can't add to it. That's a discussion for later. Fair enough, said Marianne as they grasped his arm. Now, please take a short rest. I will when she does. I think the she needs to be italicised. Oh, wrong button. Stubborn, muttered Marianne. Vickers raised his eyebrows. Something all of us have in common, then. They were interrupted by Ronnie. Neither of them had noticed her approach. Is Marianne trying to talk you into have a break? Vickers nodded. How did I not spot that? Nodding. Vickers nodded. Ronnie exhaled. Cards has spent the last hour trying to talk me into the same, and he's right. Only one person can try and interface at a time. I'm going to get a few hours rest, and then I'll swap with him. You should come with me. It'll do us both good. She leaned over and rested a hand on Vickers' shoulder. You can barely keep your eyes open, Adrian. Come on. Vickers relented and followed her out of the room. Just as Marianne rejoined Oakley, his phone rang. He lifted it and looked at the screen. It's Oliver Shaw. I need to take this. I'll be in the corridor outside. 3 hours later, Marianne was sitting in the rec room watching live coverage of the transfer of power on the news. On the television screen, a car carrying Derek Cocklewright and his wife Julie pulled up inside the courtyard at Buckingham Palace. Less than 10 minutes later, the same car was shown pulling away, leaving the palace using a rear exit. Marianne sighed and was about to call Oakley when he entered the room. What have I missed? He asked. Overnight, terrorists broke into most of the airfields where aircraft waiting to disassembly are being stored, including Heathrow, and blew up or set fire to as many as they could. Minimal deaths, lots of damage. Oakley smiled to himself. Cockerell right. Cunning old fox. He hinted that he had a couple of tricks up his sleeve when we spoke earlier. Anything else? He just resigned, Marianne told him. His speech outside number 10 was alarming, just short of terrifying, in fact. Oakley sat down on the armchair that was positioned next to the sofa. What did he say? He said that his government's environmental policies were unpleasant but necessary, and that the Red Victors would help initiate the environmental fiasco that his party was desperately trying to avoid. His last words were something like, "I hope that life will continue on this sceptre dial long enough to enable a future government to correct Carl Tucker's catastrophic mistakes." "Terrific," stated Oakley gloomily. "There was something else there," said Marianne. "In his demeanour. He always had an almost tedious positivity about him. I've never seen anyone seem so defeated." Oakley muttered something under his breath, then stood up and started pacing around the room. "I heard a bit of that in my conversation upstairs with him. That's why I switched off the hands-free and had the last part of the conversation in private. His manner reminded me of something." He stopped in his tracks, shook his head and turned to face Marianne. About 15 years ago, an expert on nuclear weapons gave evidence to a select committee saying that he believed that the government of the time had exaggerated Iraq's weapons potential. The belief was that this had been done to justify the invasion of Iraq, and the gentleman in question had deliberately leaked this information. That committee was televised. Cocklewright's demeanour reminded me of what I saw then. "Why are you telling me this?" "The expert was found dead the day after. The inquest ruled that it was suicide." Marianne shook their head. "And you think Cocklewright might do the same?" "His last words to me that he was not going to allow any of his family to suffer." Marianne swallowed, but Oakley continued. "I've just had another call from Oliver Shaw. He's getting as many armed men together as he can at Alpha Site. Some of them making their way here now with more to follow. It's not ideal. All of them have abilities and training that will be invaluable in the world after, and none of them are soldiers." He sat down heavily on the sofa between Marianne and No, Claire's upstairs. "Agricultural specialist medics," he shook his head. "They are going to attempt to defend the Arboretum so that we can continue to try and convince the entity in the tree to allow Idrisil to save us." I think I'm going to say same, just... Sign off in the tree. Sign off to allow Idrisil to save us. Some of them may die, which could cause us a problem if there is a world after. If there's a world for any of us afterwards. "It's all getting rather close to the wire," said Marianne uncomfortably. "Tell me about it," said Oakley softly. On the television screen, a heavily armoured black car pulled up at the front gates of Buckingham Palace. They opened, and it was allowed through. The vehicle came to stop before the main entrance, and Carl Tucker was escorted from his car. An elegant-looking woman in a long black dress walked in with him, and the doors were closed behind them. "Is that his wife?" asked Claire. "She's the mother of some of his children, yes," said Oakley dryly. "Well, that's that, I suppose. When he walks out of that building again, he will be Prime Minister. I wonder how long we will have to wait before the army turns up after that." I think army should have a capital A, yeah. "Not long," said Marianne softly. "He says that he's already chosen his cabinet, and as soon as he gets number 10, there's going to be a Cobra meeting. No prizes for guessing what's top of their agenda." "What are we going to do?" asked Marianne quietly. "Well, that depends if we can talk to Simulf in time, and if they decide to help us." "A lot of ifs," stated Marianne. "Too many," said Oakley as he shook his head. The three of them watched the television for another 10 minutes until it showed aerial footage of the armour car driving away from the palace and towards Downing Street. At that point, Oakley's phone buzzed and as he received a text. He leapt up. "Oliver Shaw has just arrived here," Oakley said as he rushed to the door. "See if you can get any clues to Tucker's intentions from his speech at the Downing Street door, then come and find me." With that, he dashed out of the room. Marianne's phone vibrated a few seconds later. They glanced down at it and read the note attached to the alarm on their screen. Then that's just a bit over fluffy. Don't need half that detail. Marianne's phone vibrated a few seconds later. They stood and walked the short distance down the corridor to the adjacent door. After a small hesitation, they knocked loudly. knocked loudly. Ronnie, time to get up, lovely. Oakley dashed up the stairs, past the bright turquoise-painted labs and rooms adjacent to the corridor, and into the anteroom next to the arboretum. A tall, thin, grey-haired man was waiting there, escorted by Sharvar and Matthews. Matthews, like Vicar, was no longer wearing his uniform. "Oliver," said Oakley warmly. He grasped the older man by the hand, and they hugged briefly. "Long time no see." "I bet you're sick to death with hearing my voice, though," said Shaw. "We've managed to get all of our key logistical personnel up to the Alpha site, but we have a new problem." "Tell me," asked Oakley. "The plan was that once Idrisil gave us the date when oxygen production would cease, she would release a Skald for each designated survivor close to where they were at the time, and those Skald would escort them up here to interface with one of the trees in the Cairngorms until life sterilization was complete and oxygen restored. We were ready to set up rendezvous points and transport hubs with the Skald as a defence fort if required. The builders, electricians, doctors and plumbers, as well as the leaders, would be released first once oxygen levels returned to normal. They would clear any bodies from the chosen villages and make sure the homes were in a good state of repair, ensure the wind turbines and solar arrays were installed. People would then slowly be released over the next few years, enabling us to build up our agricultural output so there'd be enough food to go around. And that's just got a word the wrong way around. People would then be slowly released over the next few years, enabling us to build up our agricultural outputs so there would be enough food to go around, and so that the farmers could train everybody else in techniques for cultivating the land. And now we can't get everyone up here in time," stated Oakley morosely. "Is there a backup plan? Because the Ragnarok faction decided upon total human sterilisation, they will not release those Skald. Even if Carruthers and Ronnie can be persuaded to revert to Idrisil's plan, there is no longer enough time to get the designated survivors up here. They'll have to hibernate in trees local to where they live, which then gives us the logistical nightmare of getting the majority of them almost 500 miles north in a world with no transport infrastructure. Oh, it's possible, but it will be messy. Not everyone will make it." I'm going to change that to "I doubt everyone will make it." "We have a contingency plan for that?" Shaw tilted his head from left to right. "We do. Every future survivor we contacted and told what's happening, what they need to do and where they need to go once they've left hibernation. Not everyone who's been selected to survive knows yet that they have been chosen, but most of them are single and without close family. The team at Alpha is currently trying to contact as many of them as possible. However, they're probably going to have to stop that soon, before they finish the task, and come here to help defend the Arboretum. Because if the army attack, that will be our only line of defence," said Oakley, nodding morosely. "How many of them are trained to use weapons?" Shaw shrugged. "About half. Your bit is to work out how we get Sunwolf back to the network." Oakley folded his arms. "The way I see it, we have two viable options. If we can persuade the entity in the Arboretum to advocate for us before the army, gets here, it's easy. We get it to transfer into Claire, then walk her outside to another tree. All she has to do is interface with one of the larger ones, and then that's it. Job done." "And if the army gets here first?" Shaw watched his old friend carefully, trying to read every expression on his face. "Then things may get exceedingly messy," replied Oakley. "We will still need to get Claire into that tree, but the army..." I don't understand why army has a capital A and police doesn't. Okay, that makes sense. Shaw groaned. "So how will we accomplish that? Any way that we can. It will be bloody. Many of us may die. Shaw nodded and looked back down his notes. We have other issues too. We've been able to request that your opus we've been able to request that your opus status be reinstated, and Lord Farnborough is out there somewhere with his opus status still intact. So he might yet survive all of this. Given the recent ruthlessness displayed by the man, almost inevitable, I would say. Oakley shrugged. One problem at a time, I think. Shaw glanced down at his friend. You are dealing with your bad news remarkably well, I must say. Oakley looked down at his shoes. They need a good polish, he thought to himself. I don't want to die. Of course I don't. But right now I need to ensure we can get Carruthers or Ronnie to convince this entity to help us, and then get Claire to where she needs to go. Hopefully we can figure out something for me before the end. If we can't, then... He paused and shrugged. If my death helps the others to survive, it will have been worth it. You mean that? Asked Shaw gently. Absolutely, replied Oakley. And you're not scared? Oakley closed his eyes for a moment, then looked back up at Shaw. I'm absolutely fucking terrified, he admitted. I'll do all I can to help, said Shaw. I'll lever your Kunda at Alpha and get them to interface now, see if we can do anything to help you. No, said Oakley angrily. Not if that's a person that can defend us here. By all means, once we've got Claire and the entity safely into a network tree, fine. But for all you know, that one extra pair of hands here today could be the one that makes the difference. Don't do it. It would be putting my life ahead of the survival of everyone. Shaw was about to respond when Ronnie entered via the service corridor near the stairs. Adrian Vickers was about 3 feet behind her, and both looked as though they'd just woken up. Ronnie greeted Oakley and was about to brush past. Ronnie, Oakley called after her retreating form. This is Oliver Shaw from the Alpha site. He's going to get us some extra people to defend the Arboretum. Ronnie stopped in the tracks and swiveled round to face him. Nice to meet you, Mr. Shaw, she said, although nothing in her body language suggested that she meant it. When will they be here? As soon as I can arrange it, said Shaw. If they left now, how long? About 45 minutes, said Shaw cautiously. Ronnie looked at her watch. It was showing 10:20. We need them here by 11 o'clock at the latest. Carl Tucker is about to go into a Cobra meeting, which is only going to have one item on the agenda. Us. They will want to secure this facility because it's the only leverage he thinks he has over the trees. Leverage, sorry. We can expect the... Army with the capital A. We expect the army shortly after that. Your people need to leave Alpha Site now. And we have to hope that we're more organised than Tucker and get here before the army does. She turned around and dashed through the open metal door into the Arboretum. Vickers followed her. Nice to meet you too, said Shaw to himself. Problem is, she's right, said Oakley. Shaw exhaled. I know, I'll get on it. He selected a number from the contacts on his phone and raised it to his ear. Carruthers was standing patiently with both of his palms on the barkless surface of the damaged tree when he heard Ronnie rush in. He opened his eyes and lowered his hands. Anything? Asked Ronnie as she approached him. Nothing at all, replied Carruthers. Not a vegan sausage. Ronnie shook her head. We're running out of time. Vickers moved into position beside her and put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She glared at him and shook it off. Not now, Private. He snatched his hand back, recoiling like a wounded animal. Oakley and Shaw are arranging more bodies to physically protect us, Ronnie continued. But unless we can make contact with Simewolf, it's all pointless. Vickers stepped away as Carruthers and Ronnie talked, hurt at how brusque she had been with him. With his rifle over his shoulder, he approached the tree, looking at the surface in awe. Something he did not understand was going to mean the difference between life and death, not just for the people here, but for everyone on Earth. He knew enough to realise that there were small groups of designated survivors all over the world, and that their chances of success or failure was directly related to what Ronnie and Carruthers were trying to do here. He looked at the exposed white flesh of the bare tree where the bark had been ripped away and raised his hand to touch it. It was not as hard as he had expected. It felt somehow soft like a sponge. He watched with horror as his fingers seemed to be swallowed into the surface, and he let out a gasp. "What are you doing?" yelled Carruthers. He dived for Vickers and tried to pull his hand away. Ronnie was with him in an instant. Vickers' face was covered with a sheen of sweat. "I can hear a voice," he said shakily. "Really?" Carruthers shook his head. "That's not possible. They don't communicate at a rate we can hear in real time." "I think this one can with a super sugar," whispered Ronnie. Vickers' face was fixed, staring at his hand, which was now barely visible. "Adrian!" He did not look at her, so she put her hand on his chin and pulled his face towards her. "What can you hear?" "And why the hell is he talking through this idiot boy instead of you or me?" asked Carruthers angrily. "Or Claire?" He gestured to the girl who was sitting up on the bed and watching with interest. "I need to talk to Marianne," said Vickers. "Why?" asked Ronnie. Vickers looked as though he was embarrassed by what he was about to say. "I need to tell them I love them," he said quietly. Carruthers laughed out loud. "What?" He looked at Ronnie, expecting her to be angry, but her face was suddenly full of empathy. She stepped forwards and put her hand gently on Vickers' cheek. "Am I talking to Mackenzie?" she asked softly. "Aye," replied Vickers. Ronnie looked across to Carruthers. Get Marianne up here immediately. Carruthers nodded wide-eyed and rushed out of the room. Why do you want to speak to them now? Because I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to leave, wherever it is that I am now. Vickers looked across at Ronnie as though suddenly seeing her for the first time. Do you know what will happen to me, Ronnie? If the trees don't allow us to survive, I will stay in this tree, and over hundreds of years I will be broken down. My consciousness will fade, and eventually I will be just nutrients. Food. Ronnie stepped forward so the face was inches from his. I'm scared, Ronnie, he said. She blinked. His voice belonged to Adrian Vickers, but Mackenzie's Scottish burr was unmistakable in his speech, I'm going to say. Ronnie grabbed his other hand and kissed him gently on the cheek. I never got the chance to tell you how well you did when we presented our case to the ministers. When you ran away, we all felt like a small part of us had died. We were so worried. I was selfish. I'm sorry. You were scared. We all understood, and we all wished that you'd felt as though you trusted us enough to tell us how you were really feeling. Marianne especially felt they'd failed you. Vickers blinked, but the way he furrowed his brow in concentration made him look more like Mackenzie. I was scared, but probably not what you think. Then tell me. Mackenzie gave a shy smile. It's not you that I need to tell. I don't know how long I can be here for. He looked around him. Where's Marianne? Carruthers has gone to get them. I thought I was going to die without seeing them again. Ronnie squeezed his hand and a tear escaped down her cheek. They were with you immediately before you interfaced. They held your hand when you were dying. Because you were dying, Mackenzie. That thing they put on your head, the infections it caused, had almost killed you by the time we found you. What about Claire? Have they hurt her too? Ronnie's eyes clouded over with anger. More than you can imagine. And she now has the same interface device on her head that you did. I'm going to lose the end. Plus she now has the same interface device on her head that you did. Look behind me. Now, didn't I just say Claire left? I know I have established that Claire is there. In an earlier version, Claire left the room, but I've obviously corrected that. Plus, she now has the same interface device on her head that you did. Look behind me, she's here. Vickers looked up, and his eyes moved over to the form on the bed. I'm sorry, Claire, he said. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm sorry for what they did to you. But if they allow any of us to survive, then you can live too. His eyes moved back to Ronnie's face, and the ghost of a smile flashed across his face. The trees can save me, repair the damage, but it will take a while. They can do the same for her, if there is a world after. A voice came from the door. Is it true? Marianne was standing there, their eyes red. Are you really Mackenzie? Marianne. Mackenzie's eyes also reddened, then he looked back at Ronnie. Can you give us a few moments? Carruthers was standing behind Marianne. We can, lad. We don't have much time. You need to be quick. Mackenzie nodded. Ronnie let go of his hand. I just need to... Mackenzie nodded. Ronnie let go of his hand, walked over to Claire to disconnect the cables from the crown. Then Claire, and Carruthers left the room. Marianne walked quickly over to him. So we helped you in time. They raised their hand and touched his cheek. Aye. Mackenzie's face gave another shy smile. I didn't get the opportunity to say this to you before. I planned what I would say, but I got too sick. I thought I was going to die. Marianne nodded. I'm willing to listen, they said softly. There's something I need to do first, though, if that's okay. I need to remove that gun. It's just not you. Hello. Yeah, I'm shattered. So I slept for some reason really badly last night. No idea why. Nicest temperature in my room in the last few days. There's no reason that I couldn't sleep, but I didn't. So I spent a lot of today dozing on and off, watching telly. But I thought, no, I need to get at least one chapter signed off today. But actually, I'm going to try and do 2 or 3. Mackenzie looked perplexed, then looked at the weapon hanging from his shoulder. A look of horror crossed his face. Yes, please get rid of the bloody thing. Marianne removed the rifle from his shoulder, placing it carefully on the floor. Then they stood straight up in front of him. So? Their face conveyed a daunting combination of seriousness and anger. I've had a lot of time to think, said Mackenzie. I'm so sorry I hurt your feelings in the car that night. I was worried about what other people would think about me and you. Marianne nodded. You were worried that people, especially your family, would think you were gay? Aye. And what Carruthers helped me to realise, but it doesn't matter what other people think. You accepted me for who I was, and I wasn't capable of giving you the same basic courtesy. And for that, I'm so sorry. I know it sounds like bollocks, but you made me feel safe and comfortable. I understand you probably don't feel the same way, but I just had to tell you. Tell me what? You need me to say it. It's just you and me here, Mackenzie. Marianne gazed sternly into their eyes. If you can't articulate it when it's just us, how am I supposed to believe that you'll be comfortable expressing it around others? Mackenzie looked embarrassed and closed his eyes. I'm in love with you. He opened them again, and seeing Marianne was neither laughing or looking annoyed, found the courage to continue. I wanted to thank you for being there for me in a way that nobody else ever has been before. And if I told you you'd burned your bridges? I'd say I'm sorry, he said. He glanced up shyly, a small grin crossing his face. And I'd also say that I don't believe you. Marianne finally smiled and some tears escaped from their eyes as they buried their face in his right shoulder. You're a little shit, they murmured, as their left arm went over his shoulder and onto his back. They raised the head and placed the hand on the back of his neck, looking directly into his eyes. You look like Private Vickers, they said with a smile, and that's why I won't kiss you. I don't think Ronnie would approve. But do you want to? I couldn't say. I wouldn't want you to get cocky. Mackenzie grinned. Then a perplexed expression crossed his face. Why? Marianne smiled. Ma, you've got a lot to catch up on. But you'll fill me in if there isn't after. Marianne leaned across and kissed him on the cheek. Yes, they said softly, if we both survive this. They looked into his eyes and touched his lips with their index finger. He closed his eyes. Thank you, he said, exhaling gently, then raised his free hand, placing it on her cheek. I have to go now. Please get the others. Get Claire. Simon is ready to speak to you all. Finally, sighed Marianne. I'll go and get them. I'll see you when I see you. Mackenzie smiled. I hope so. Marianne frowned. There's just one thing. Why has Simon let you do this? Mackenzie thought for a moment. Because they felt your pain. Because they were impressed by your willingness to help me, even at the cost of your own life. They felt you deserved the reassurance that I had survived long enough to get here. They think you're terrific, Marianne. And so do I. Marianne blinked back a tear, leaned forward and kissed Mackenzie. There's a lot of kissing on the cheek going on. Let's get rid of some of this cheek kissing, facial cheek. There we go. That instance of kiss on the cheek can just bugger off. Right. I have to go now. Get the others. With that, Mackenzie's face became expressionless. Marianne rushed over to the arboretum door and pulled it fully open. The look on Vicker's face changed as he removed his now released hand from the tree. Looking thoughtfully, he picked up his rifle from the floor, swung it back over his shoulder and walked over to the door. Simon is ready to speak, Marianne said to Ronnie. Carruthers had been talking furiously to Oakley, stood up. About bloody time, he said. Ronnie scowled in his direction. Are you ready for this, Claire? Claire nodded. Ronnie grabbed her by the hand and led her into the arboretum, Marianne immediately behind them. Oakley, Vickers, Carruthers, Sharvar, Shaw and four armed men followed them. Claire sat on the surgical bed and lay back. Restrain me, please, she said. Do we need to? Asked Ronnie. The emotional thesaurus is good for giving alternative ways of showing different emotions. No, I just didn't need to. I just wanted a kiss on the cheek. I just put it in twice by mistake. Do we need to? Asked Ronnie. I've no idea, said Marianne, clipping the cables onto Claire's crown. It's a sensible precaution. They snapped the leg, arm and neck restraints into place. Shaw looked across from the door in interest as Marianne walked over to the controls. They flicked some switches, then turned back. Are you ready, Claire? They asked. I think so, she replied, closing her eyes. I'm activating now. Marianne threw a switch and the two brainwaves came up on the screen. They quickly merged into one, and the moment they synchronised, Claire's eyes snapped open. I can't see everyone, said Claire. Step before me so that I can see all of you. Marianne, Ronnie, Carruthers and Oakley moved so they were positioned just in front of the bed. Is that everyone? She asked. Almost, replied Marianne. We have some soldiers protecting the entrance. We should be safe, but they must remain there just in case. Claire nodded. Marianne stepped forwards. Okay, yeah, yeah. Right, talk to you in a bit. Marianne stepped forward. Marianne stepped from the line before Claire. Marianne, come forward. Marianne stepped from the line before Claire. I trust that enabling you to have a conversation with your friend Mackenzie was helpful to you. Marianne smiled. That was kind of you, thank you. I don't think I understood the complex nature of human interaction. I've been looking through Claire's mind to find a suitable analogy, and the best comparison I can see is that we perceive you the way you do your primitive cave-dwelling ancestors. We believe that you reacted to things in a primal, instinctive way. I was shocked and surprised by how much affection you are all capable of having for other individuals, and how that affection drives so many of your actions. Can I ask why you wanted to speak to us? Asked Marianne. Of course, replied Simorph. Thanks to my early interactions with your people, and especially Marianne, I've concluded that my previous judgments were too severe. After consideration, rapid by our standards, but I realise you have so little time. After consideration, I've decided that I will advocate for you. If you can find a safe way of returning me to the collective, I will communicate this to them. That should be enough to sway the others. I will recommend the adoption of the Idrisil plan. We shall allow designated survivors. Ronnie burst into tears and Simorph frowned. Why is water coming from your eyes? I understood this to be an emotional response linked to sadness. Not just sadness, said Marianne, stepping forward and pulling Ronnie towards them. Any extreme emotion. This is relief. We all thought we were going to die. You've just given us a lifeline. You have just given us a lifeline that may allow everyone in this room to survive. May allow almost everyone in this room to survive. Almost everyone, asked Simorph. Yes, sniffed Ronnie. She looked around to Oakley, who was shaking his head. Oakley, identify yourself to Simorph. Oakley raised his hand in embarrassment. Hello? Ronnie gazed directly into Simorph's eyes. This is a man called Gordon Oakley. He's one of the architects of the plan to try and deliver Idrisil's directives. He's brave and honourable. Under Idrisil's plan, he was to be a designated survivor, an opus. Lorne Farnborough revoked that status. Farnborough is one of mine, said Simorph sadly. I used him to try and ensure the Idrisil directives were not achieved. To make it seem as though it was humanity itself that had failed. That was cruel and cowardly, snapped Ronnie. Oakley shook his head. Now is not the time to piss the thing off. Farnborough has revoked Oakley's status as opus, continued Ronnie. Unless it can be reinstated, he will die with everyone else when the oxygen runs out. We need him. I need him. Oakley looked away and put his hands over his eyes. You wish me to reinstate his opus status when I communicate with the collective? Asked Simorph. Is there something you can do? Asked Ronnie. Yes, stated Simorph. Then I demand that you do so, said Ronnie. Simorph grinned. You have much of Idrisil's arrogance, Ambassador. However, if I can rejoin the collective, I will communicate your wishes. Simorph paused. I'm curious. No. So in fact, I can't put that yet. No. This just makes things too complicated. Let's have him. You have much of your desire as ambassador. However, I can join the collective will communicate your wishes. Oh, I've paused. There we go. That's just got him out of the way, which means that's better. I'm curious to understand how you intend to achieve this. We don't have much time, said Ronnie. We will disconnect from the tree whilst you're occupying Claire, then walk you outside. It should only take a few minutes. Then Claire can interface with a suitable tree in the forest. Will that work? Someone was angry and shook her head, and shook their head. I've tried to keep them gender neutral. It would work, but it is not a risk I'm prepared to take. Ronnie's eyes widened. But it's literally outside. It would take no time at all. It's perfectly safe, I promise you. Then why do you have soldiers here protecting you? As a precaution, said Ronnie, we expect the government to attempt to retake the facility soon. How far away are they? We don't know. Simewolf snorted derisively. So they could be nearby. Not yet, no. Not good enough, snapped Simewolf. Come up with something better. I shall return to my form now. When you have a viable suggestion for me to assess, the ambassador should initiate contact again, and I will speak through Claire. Please, I promise you it's safe. I'm just going to say we could almost have done it in the time it has taken to have this conversation. Please, I promise you it's safe. We could almost have done the time it's taken to have this conversation. Some have closed. Again, I've suddenly decided to give Simon with their eyes and opening a few seconds later. I looked into Claire's mind. If this army that is coming shoots me and I'm trapped in this form, I will die immediately. I will help you if I can, but I will not risk my own death in the process. Some have closed. Their eyes. Managed to go to the computer screen and examine the monitors. It's gone, they stated. Claire, are you with us? Claire opened her eyes. Aye, she replied. Sure. Step forward. I've just had a text message. Full Arbor report for reinforcement will be here in 20 minutes. Oakley nodded. That should be before the army gets here. He glanced up at a news page on his phone. Our new Prime Minister is still in the Cobra meeting, so it should be okay. What are we going to do? Asked Marianne. Oakley glanced briefly at Claire and then Ronnie, then shook his head. Claire, you look tired. I think you should take a rest. Marianne stepped over, unclipped the cables from Claire's crown and undid the restraints. I'm okay, said Claire. Ronnie took her hand and helped her to her feet. Adrian, she called, take Claire down into my room now. Vicar stepped forwards and escorted reluctant Claire from the arboretum. Oakley stepped over to Ronnie. Walked. Crossed. Do you think what I'm thinking? He asked. We don't have time to come up with another plan, so probably yes, said Ronnie. And a lot of stepping, so I'm just going to say Marianne glanced at the door. They're gone, they said. So we need to lure Simon into Claire's body, then disconnect them so they've nowhere else to go? Asked Ronnie. You believe that we need to lure Simon into Claire's body, then they've nowhere else to go? Asked Ronnie. I don't see an alternative, said Oakley. They won't like it, said Crothers. I know, said Oakley, but will it piss them off enough for them to rescind their offer to help us? I've no idea, admitted Ronnie. Get outside, find the nearest suitable interface tree for Claire so we can get this done super quickly. Ronnie nodded. Shava, with me. Ronnie ran to the metal door and threw into the antechamber. Shava, with me, she said. Shava saluted and followed her. It's dangerous, said Crothers. Have you got a better plan, said Oakley. No, I get that it's all we've got. We need to do it as soon as possible, because if we can't get Simon off to tree before the army gets here, then we don't have a prayer. Crothers held his hands together sarcastically as he said the last word, his eyes wide. Oakley turned to the other soldiers that were in the room. Do not discuss this, any of you, even amongst yourselves. If Claire discovers what we're planning, Simon will read it in them when they connect. Then we'll be out of options. We'll retreat into the relative safety of the tree, and that'll be that. They will never occupy Claire's body long enough for us to disconnect her. He paused. Then that's it for the human race. Ronnie stalked confidently into the clearing around the arboretum. The western exit offered a tree line that was far closer to the door than the eastern, but the more she studied the trees, the more she began to realise that the ones close to the complex were too small to safely allow an interface. She walked around in semicircles, the radius of her path widening each time. Shava followed, a distracted look on his face. If I understood exactly what you were looking for, I could help. I could help more, he said eventually, as she dashed another couple of metres deeper into the forest. She looked up at him, then at the tree in front of her. Have you seen someone interface? She asked. Shava swallowed. Only your friend Danny on the video, he answered cautiously. Ronnie stopped examining the tree and glared at him. I'm sorry, he said. No, don't be sorry, she replied. In theory, the mass of most trees dictates whether or not they can interface with a person. But there are some physical considerations too. The diameter of the tree has to be larger than the width of the person, otherwise not all of them will be successfully absorbed. She grimaced, which, as you can imagine, would be fatally unpleasant. Their consciousness would be transferred if the whole head was absorbed, but a tree will only allow a host to die in a... A tree will only allow the host to die in a dire emergency. For example, if a human host is in possession of an endangered tree spirit. Ronnie touched the wood before and the bark raced slightly around her fingers. Why would there be a tree spirit in a person? Oh, hang on. I'm waiting for the bark to... Ronnie touched the wood before, waiting for the bark to slightly raise around her fingers. Nothing happened. She sighed. Why would there be a tree spirit in a person? In the past, younger tree spirits, dryads, saw exploring the world in the body of an animal as a rite of passage. Hundreds of years ago, it was not uncommon. If something happened, if the living body was attacked or critically injured in some way, and there was not a large enough tree close by, a smaller tree could save it by allowing just the head to interface, thus saving the dryad but sacrificing the host. So Claire could transfer Simon's consciousness but die in the process. That's about the size of it, said Ronnie, but that is her last resort. Sharvar shivered, then looked around him. I don't think there's anything large enough on this side of the building, he said eventually. There are some a few metres further in that would do the trick, retorted Ronnie. But we still have to get Claire there, stated Sharvar. Fine if the army has not arrived. Bloody trick if they have. They will easily be able to pick her off. Remember, Tucker understands at least to a degree how all of this works, and he will have briefed his... I'm going to say, it says his troops, I'm going to say the soldiers. Ronnie took a hand down from the tree. I don't know what we'll do if they arrive before we can get Simon to safety. There will only be one option at that point, said Sharvar. We have to physically surround her, walk in a mass with her in the centre and hope they don't manage to kill enough of us before we can get her to a suitable tree. You think they'd shoot at civilians? Sharvar grinned ruefully. You had 6 people in place to protect you. 3 of them were willing to kill you because their order changed. Soldiers are not trained to think, Ambassador. They're trained to act. Ronnie shrugged, nodded. Then you're right. We need to try looking around the other exit. The tree line is nearer to the eastern door than it is here. Haven't I just contradicted that? In the direction of the doorway entrance, which is 40 metres away in a straight line, the back to Sharvar. Can I ask you something? Certainly, replied. Are you Opus? I can see you're not Yakunda. Sharvar exhaled deeply. No, ma'am. Ronnie frowned. So whatever happens, you're going to die. Sharvar shook his head. I'd rather not be reminded of that. But you're still here, helping us. Why wouldn't I be? Because there's nothing in it for you. Sharvar nodded soberly. It's the right thing to do. Better that some survive than none, even if one of them isn't me. Ronnie closed eyes for a second. You're a very brave man, Mr. Sharvar. Like Mr. Oakley. Until 10 minutes ago he thought he was going to die too. Sharvar looked up at her, his face dark in the dim light. Is there nothing you can do for me? For any of us here that are not designated survivors? No, said Ronnie. It was harsher than she'd intended, and she looked back at him. Sorry, it's too late. You were able to help Oakley? He's already known to Idrisil. You are not. Sharvar nodded. Let's try the eastern door, he said, walking away. Ronnie pretended she'd not heard his voice falter as she followed him back to the complex. Just as the rector into the door, the sound of vehicles could be heard on the service road. Ronnie's eyes widened and she pointed to them. Sharvar directed her attention to the roof above the door. Matthews and another man she did not know was setting up a mounted machine gun. I'm going to say whose name she did not know. Another man whose name she could not remember, rather than did not know. We're setting up a mounted machine gun. He waved down at her. It's okay, it's our people. Oakley just radioed through. The Arbor reinforcements have arrived. Do you know how many? Asked Ronnie. I don't, replied Matthews. Let them know Sharvar and I are going to scout around by the eastern door. Matthews saluted down to her. Mum, as he raised his radio, they all heard shouts and rapid gunfire. Army on this house, screamed Matthews. Get her inside. Sharvar grabbed Ronnie's coat and bolted roughly through the door, slamming it behind them. As soon as they were inside, Matthews swung the machine gun round and started firing into the forest. Too high to hit anyone, but enough to alert the army that the Arboretum was defended. Oakley was barking orders into his radio when Shaw dashed in. Our people are all in safely, said Shaw, but we're surrounded. Has anyone seen Ronnie? Oakley shouted desperately. Vickers had just returned from making sure Claire got some rest and he tensed when he heard the question. Luckily he did not have to worry for long as Ronnie and Sharvar burst into the room. What's happening? Ronnie demanded. The Arbor reinforcements got here just in time. The place is now surrounded by the army. They've encircled us from the tree line. He shook his head. Did you find a suitable tree? It's just... Did you find a suitable tree? Ronnie shook her head. Well, there is one, but it's about 20 metres into the forest. I was hoping to find something closer from the eastern door. Great, said Oakley. So the army is between us and it. Ronnie nodded. There's only one thing we can do now. We have to get Claire to that tree, even if it means we lose every single person in this base. How the hell are we going to do that? Ronnie grimaced. Do the army have respirators? Not that we can see. Then we will all be at the same disadvantage, said Ronnie. We maybe have a few hours of useful consciousness at the rate the oxygen is diminishing. We have very little time to get this done. And how are we going to do it? Shouted Oakley, almost immediately regretting it and taking some deep breaths. Sharvaz, give me the only viable option. I don't like it. None of us are going to like it. Get every person in here now, apart from Claire and the men on the roof. I need to brief everyone. Dun, dun, dun. Right. Okay, so file export to Word. Save. I'm going to run this through Grammarly now, and then I probably will do another chapter, at least. Why has that not appeared? Let's just make sure it hasn't appeared in a silly place. No, it hasn't. What have I done? So, file, export to Word, save. Why is it doing that? That's bizarre. Okay, so it hasn't done that ever before. Let me just go into this. So I should have, I should have a Word copy of that, which I don't want, which I can drop back into the trash. There's a fly buzzing around which I'm going to have to kill. It's annoying me. Test trees we examined. None of the trees we examined is producing. Since it was judgment with an E. That's what I thought, so I was right. And Grammarly is just trying to Americanise me. Oop. Yay! So that's a very good score, isn't it? 97%, maybe more now. Let's just see what it gave me. 98. I'm not going to argue with that. So file. So I want to download the file. Drag it there. Minimize that. Open that. Hopefully. Is Word doing anything? Yes, it is. It's just being slow. Copy it. So that's the corrected version. Pop it into a neutral file with no There we go. Did I just copy that? Let's just check. I think I did. Right, and then finally drop it back into the original file. Format it correctly. Check it is the right chapter, because it is. Chapter 37 is signed off. Woohoo! Only 6 to go. Should have done this yesterday really, but never mind, I didn't. So chapter 37 can be dragged into the edited folder. It's going to let me. Yay, so chapter 38. Good grief, we're doing so well now. I'm just going to go get myself a cool drink, and then we'll crack straight on. I think I'm going to have some power requirements. Bear with me. Ugh. Yes. Right, and I've got my cable for the laptop down here as well. That's really annoying, so you're staying open. Right, and I might actually open that. It's getting very warm here, so if I open this door, get a bit of a breeze coming through, which will be slightly less warm. Get myself that cold drink I was talking about, and then the next chapter. Right then, might as well crack straight on. Chapter 38, Endgame. God. Ronnie stood beside the tree in the arboretum. Everyone in the complex had gathered around her except Claire, who was resting in the basement, and Vickers, who was ensuring that she did not come upstairs. Soldiers also protected each of the two entrances. The remaining 40 people were waiting for her to speak. Beside her were Marianne, Carruthers and Shaw. The group opposite was a mixture of Arbor troops that come with them to the Cairngorms, and the raw recruits that Shaw had seconded earlier that day from the Alpha site. All of them carried weapons. A few knew how to use them, and the remainder looked petrified. Oakley walked into the room and joined Ronnie. We've set up as much of a perimeter as we can. Matthews will inform me directly if he sees any soldiers. He has spotted some movement in the trees, but so far nobody has ventured into the clearing. They could be as close as 20 metres from the door, stated Sharvar, who was in the group facing them. That is correct, replied Shaw. Ronnie looked at Oakley, who nodded at her. She stepped forward. The tree behind me contains the entity Simorph, who is the missing leader of the Ragnarok faction. They have agreed that the original Idrisil plan, the one with the designated Opus and Jacunda survivors, is reasonable, and this entity has the clout to bring the rest of their faction in line. The tree, unfortunately, is disconnected from their network, and thanks to an experiment conducted by Carl Tucker, there is no way to reconnect it in time. Ronnie paused, looking at the terrified group in front of her, then gestured to the computer console and the adjacent hospital bed. This apparatus allows Simorph, the tree spirit or dryad, to inhabit a human form. We have a host ready called Claire. Shortly we'll bring her up here and allow Simorph to inhabit her. As soon as this happens, we will destroy the connection so that Simorph may not return to the safety of the tree. This will anger them, but it cannot be helped. She looked around the room again, and her gaze eventually rested on Sharvar. Of all of the people before her, he was the only one who knew what had to happen next. He shifted uncomfortably and nodded. The only way Simorph will be able to communicate with the rest of the Ragnarok faction is for us to walk Claire out of there by the western exit and to the tree line. Approximately 20 metres further into the forest is a tree large enough to enable her to interface. We have to get her to it in any way that we can. One of the newly arrived Alpha Site personnel now. I've given Alpha Site capital S up until now, so let's just... One of the newly arrived Alpha Site personnel, a young woman awkwardly carrying a rifle, spoke up. How to do that when we're surrounded? Ronnie looked directly at the person who had just spoken. What's your name? Dr. Dr. Kendra Brierley, replied the woman. This is what we need to do, Kendra. We will surround Claire. We will use our bodies as shields. Hopefully, we can get her to the suitable tree before we're all killed. There was a moment of silence before everyone began yelling at once. Shava walked across from the group and joined Ronnie. Enough! He cried. She wants us to lay down our lives, claimed Kendra angrily. I'm a doctor. I will be needed in the new world if we survive. This is not what I signed up for. Shaw stepped forwards. None of us expected this, but we now have no choice. Now that many of you will have noticed that it is getting harder to breathe. This is because the Ragnarok faction has begun the process of absorbing the oxygen from the atmosphere. It's not the Ragnarok faction. It's the trees. Have begun the process of absorbing the oxygen from the atmosphere. It's worse here because we're in the middle of a forest. It may be several days before people in the cities can feel it. Until someone delivers their message to the collective, none of us can interface in order to take our places in the world after. Not me, not Mr. Oakley, not the ambassador here. If we do not collect Claire into a suitable interface tree, then we will all be dead by the end of the day. One of the men, an agricultural specialist, stepped forward. And you're going to join us in this suicide mission too, are you, Mr. Shaw? We will all be joining you, could Ronnie at the top of a voice. We have to get Claire to that tree. Even if we all die to achieve that, our species will continue. If we do not, humanity will be extinct by the end of the week. Including you, sneered an older man at the back. Will you be out there with us? Of course, stated Ronnie. The only person in this whole complex that has to survive is Claire. Shavar looked around and yelled out again. Let me speak! Shouting quietened down. I'm not Jacunda, I'm not Opus, said Shavar passionately. Whatever happens here today, I'm going to say probably, because he does. Not see another dawn. The same is true of all of the soldiers outside protecting our perimeter. If we can do this today, some of you may yet survive. If we do not try, you will certainly die. I can accept what I have to do here today. I will make my last day count. He paused, looked down to the floor, then returned his gaze to the frightened crowd. My wife is Opus. I'm doing this for her. There was silence in the room. We're scared, said Kendra. She yelled Kendra defiantly from the back. Shavar nodded. Of course you are. So am I. But this is our only hope. We must all do this. Ronnie stepped forwards, glaring at all of the people in front of her. Well, she demanded. Kendra glared at her. This is so fucked up. Yes, stated Shavar, and there is no more time. Every moment we wait gives the army another opportunity to retake this facility. Then we will all be killed anyway. What is it to be? Kendra dropped her head, tears in her eyes. I'm with you, she said quietly. She looked at the people around her. We all have to be. Some of us will survive, won't we? Some of us will survive, yes, stated Ronnie. It was a promise that she did not keep, but it was what they needed to hear. Once Claire's interfaced and a message has been delivered, then we should be able to find host trees for the rest of us. Remember, even if we have critical injuries, once we've interfaced, we can be repaired. There is hope. The men and women before her looked uncomfortable. Go outside and discuss it amongst yourselves, said Shaw. You have 5 minutes. As the group left the room, Ronnie turned to Shavar. I didn't know that, she said, facing him. I didn't know about your wife. Shavar held up the hand that should have contained a wedding ring. It was a lie, he said, sadly, showing her an empty ring finger. I thought it might help. Ronnie blinked, then turned to Sean Oakley. What do you think they'll do? Shaw shook his head. I think most of them will help. We can't force them to, though. They're not stupid. It's going to be a bloodbath. Ronnie nodded. And I will almost certainly be one of those to die. Oh, I don't think so, Missy, snapped Oakley. You'll be as close to the middle of the pack as possible to give you the greatest chance of survival. My job is done, stated Ronnie. I'm of less value than any of these people. I'm not a doctor or a farmer. I will be on the perimeter of the group. But that means you will be one of the first to die, said Oakley angrily. Yes, stated Ronnie. You need to forget everything leading up to this point. Those of the most value in the future must be the ones immediately around Claire. That means you, me, Carruthers, Shaw, Marianne, Vickers, Shavar. We all need to be seen to be on the outside. Oakley swallowed, but Shaw nodded. She's right. My job was about getting to... She's right. My job was about getting us to this point. My role's done. If they can see we're not just using them as a human shield, if they can see that we are in as much danger as them, maybe more so, that may convince them. Ronnie gritted her teeth. Doctors in the middle, then farmers, then everyone else, then us. She beckoned to Shavar. Go and tell them. Yes, Mum, he replied and made for the door. Oakley walked calmly over to Ronnie. Are you okay? Ronnie looked squarely at him, unblinking. Yes. Everything you're saying is right. said Oakley slowly. But how can you be so matter-of-fact about it? I was made for this, said Ronnie simply. It's how it is. Shava returned through the metal door a moment later, and the rest of the other side personnel following him. It's agreed, he said hoarsely. We're in. All of you? Yes, Mum, said Shava quietly. Ronnie took this in with barely a change of the expression on her face. Good. She turned to Marianne. Marianne, go with Shava and tell him to brief Private Vickers. Without a word, Marianne left the room. Shava followed him like a shadow. We're ready, said Marianne to Claire as soon as they opened the door to Ronnie's room. Claire was sitting on the bed, her shoulders against the headboard, propped up with pillows so that the apparatus on her head was not resting against anything. I can shorten that slightly. Unnecessary pain. We're ready to go, she asked. Marianne nodded that, smiling. The quicker we get it done, the smoother it's all going to go. They reached out their hand, which Claire took gratefully. They left the room. As Marianne and Claire descended the steps, Claire stopped for a moment. What's happening, she asked. Have the army arrived yet? No, responded Marianne. They hated lying to the girl, but they had to be careful what they told her. Nothing had changed. They had no proposal other than one Simon had rejected, but they could not afford to tell her that. I haven't got time to discuss our new proposal with you. Claire nodded. They were already walking quickly through the labs and into the tunnel that led to the Arboretum. Do you think Simon would agree to it? I hope so, said Marianne quietly. We don't have time to come up with anything else. They entered a room full of people. Ronnie was standing at the foot of the surgical bed. She glanced at Claire and gave her a brief nod. Marianne led her to the bed. Claire jumped onto it, swung her legs up and waited for Marianne to put the restraints around her legs, arms and neck. Is that comfortable? Marianne asked. Claire smiled nervously. As comfortable as it will ever be. Marianne leaned down and kissed her forehead. You're brave, Claire. Hopefully I will see you on the other side of all of this. Claire's eyes filled with tears as Marianne walked across the floor to the console. Now they were out of Claire's sight, 3 people walked over to join Marianne at the computer. The timing from this point was critical. If Simon got any hint that anything was amiss, they would retreat from Claire back into the tree, and that would be the end for all of them. Marianne activated the terminal and glanced across to Carruthers. He nodded and placed his hands on the surface of the tree. It appeared to ripple slightly, and Carruthers moved his hands. He gave a thumbs-up gesture to Marianne. The 2 signals, one that represented Simulf and the other that represented Claire, appeared on the screen. Slowly, more slowly than usual, it seemed to Marianne as they watched. The 2 signals merged until both were identical. Marianne looked up to Ronnie. Simulf should be with us, they said. Claire's eyes opened, and she saw Ronnie peering down at her. I am here, said Simulf. Almost no time has passed. You already have a fresh proposal for me? We do, said Ronnie. She could see that 3 people were quietly pulling cables out of the computer, including the one that connected Claire to the system. Simulf did not seem to notice. Marianne carefully turned the computer off, and the 3 assistants started reeling the cables in. Simulf could hear something slithering across the floor. What is that? You'd better not be trying to trick me. I'm not trying to trick you at all, replied Ronnie coolly. Our plan has not changed. We've just decided that we can't afford to give you the safe option of returning to your tree. Simul's face betrayed a look that was an odd mixture of anger and terrified for a brief moment, then they closed their eyes. They snapped open again and glared at Ronnie, their face full of fury. So you still have no proper plan? You intend to coerce me into walking outside and interfacing that way? Ronnie's face betrayed no emotion at all. If only it were that simple. When we proposed that to you, there was no danger. It would have taken a minute or so. Now we are enclosed by hostile troops, and the only way we're going to get you there is to drag you, surrounded by human bodies, and hope they provide enough of a shield for you to get there alive. A look of pure terror crossed Simul's face. I'm not doing that, they stated simply. Yes, you are, stated Ronnie. If you tell me that you're not going to help us, I will kill you myself. She raised a gun that Simulf had hitherto not noticed and pointed at Claire's body. You wouldn't do that, stuttered Simulf. Ronnie's eyes seemed to glaze over. Check Claire's memories if you don't believe me. Simulf closed their eyes for a moment, then they snapped open again. The scientist says, you killed him in cold blood. Yes, stated Ronnie motionlessly. I didn't take any joy from doing it, but it was necessary. You will either help us, Simulf, or you will die. A strange look crossed Simon's face, and then they closed their eyes. Everyone in the room watched, waiting to see what the entity did next. They did not have to wait for long. With a sudden burst of what could only be described as superhuman strength, rather than energy, I think is a better way of phrasing that. Simulf sat up, the restraint around the neck tearing as though it was made of tinfoil. Simulf bellowed, tore their arms and legs from the chair, and leapt at Ronnie. Ronnie, too short to take in what was happening, took a step backwards. Simulf leapt at her, swinging their arms. Ronnie took a blow to the gut and doubled over, wincing. She dropped the gun and Simulf leapt on it, raising it and pointed directly at her. Return me to my tree immediately, screamed Simulf. Ronnie straightened up. No. I'll kill you if you don't. Ronnie shook her head. I don't matter anymore. You're going to have to kill me. But remember, Simulf, there is only one way out for you now, to do as we say. And if I'm dead, I'm one less bag of flesh that can protect you once the army is firing bullets into us. Simon scowled at Ronnie and then raised their fists to their head. They started screaming. One by one, every person with a weapon in the Arboretum who had not already done so raised it and pointed it at the angry creature. Some suddenly seemed to regain control of their body and fired the gun into the air. As everyone dropped to the floor, some dashed through the crowd, making a beeline for the tree. "Don't let them touch it!" screamed Ronnie as soon as she realised what was happening, but she was too late. Simon had already shoved several people to one side and was almost upon the oak. Vickers charged across the room and pulled the gun from Simon's grasp, and Shava attempted rugby tackle in a desperate attempt to prevent them from interfacing. Simon pushed ahead as Vickers tried to pin back their arms. Whatever reserves the creature was using to power Claire's body was stronger than any human had any right to be. Simon pushed forward and managed to raise an arm. The palm smacked onto the surface of the tree, which immediately raised around it. Vickers pulled at it, and it moved away, hovering close to the surface of the tree. Simon glared into Vickers' eyes as they struggled. Marianne squeezed Oakley's shoulder. "Let me try something. Give me your gun." Oakley shook his head. "Please, I have an idea." Oakley reluctantly handed them his weapon. Marianne walked over to Simon. "Simon, it's Marianne." Now, in the original version of this, Ronnie had prepared, and she actually had a chainsaw and a meat cleaver, and literally they sliced Claire's hand off to stop it from interfacing. And I just felt that was gratuitous violence for the sake of it, so I rewrote it so that doesn't happen. "Simon, it's Marianne." Simon stopped struggling for a moment. "What do you want?" "I want to live," said Marianne simply. "I want my friends to live. You have to help us." "Go away," snarled Claire. No, it's Simon. "Go away," snarled Simon, and started driving themselves towards the tree again. Vickers and several others tried to pull them away, but the power from Claire's tiny body was astonishing. Everyone heard the click of a gun being cocked. Simon raised their eyes and looked at Marianne. They'd expected the gun to be pointed at them, but it was not. Marianne was holding the gun to their own table. "What are you doing?" rasped Simon. "Stop, or I'll kill myself. And don't think it's an empty threat. Until I worked who I was, I seriously contemplated I seriously contemplated ending my life almost every day." Simon shook their head. "Why should I care what you do?" "Because Mackenzie told me you're impressed with me. If I die, it's on you. It's your choice. Stop struggling to help us, or I'll blow my fucking head off right in front of you, and you'll have to be the one to tell him." Some have ground their teeth and stopped struggling. "Put the gun down, Marianne." "Then help him. Then help me help us." Simon turns back to the tree. "Let me go," he said to Vickers. "If you want trust between us, then it has to be both ways." Vickers looked to Marianne, who nodded. Everyone released their grip on Simon, but placed themselves between the Dryad and the tree. Simon walked carefully over to Marianne and stood right in front of them. "Give me the weapon." Marianne shook their head. "Only if you'll help us." Simon looked straight into their eyes. "I'm scared." Marianne gulped back a tear. "And you think I'm not?" "I don't want you to hurt yourself." "Why not?" Simon looked down at Claire's feet for a few moments, then back up into their eyes. "Because you are the reason I've decided to help you all," they said gently. They put their hand forwards, prized the gun from Marianne's grasp, then leaned and kissed him gently on the cheek. They took a step back and handed Vickers the gun before turning and grabbing Marianne's trembling hands. They took a step back and handed Vickers the gun before turning, grabbing Marianne's trembling hands for a few moments. They took a step back and handed Vickers the gun. They turned and grabbed Marion's trembling hands for a few moments before disengaging and turning to Ronnie. What do we have to do? We have to surround you and get you to a suitably placed tree. Some of us will die in the process because this arboretum is now surrounded by the army. If need be, there is a tree nearby that we can get you into, but it's not large enough for Claire. Simon grabbed her again. You have a lot of Idrisil in you, they muttered. That's by design, replied Ronnie coldly. I know, said Simon. I'm sorry that I tried to escape. I'm scared. I'm now as mortal as you are. My host must survive. I can see that, like Mackenzie, she needs to discover herself. We must ensure that she has that opportunity. You say that everyone here would sacrifice themselves to save me. Ronnie nodded. Most of them are not soldiers, so the idea upsets them, but yes, even if we all die to ensure your survival, as long as you deliver your message advocating for us, some of the human race will survive. She had a slight smile on her face as she finished speaking, but then it hardened. Simon nodded, narrowed their eyes, and peered into Ronnie's. Do you trust me? Ronnie shook their head. Not in the slightest. Simon nodded. I understand. I have an idea that may help us to even the odds a little. Let me link with my tree. Oakley was standing behind them and listening, shook his head. Why on earth would we let you do that? Simon looked up at Oakley. Because I can create 2 Skald from that tree without endangering Mackenzie. Only one of those has to make it outside to one of the trees in the network, and we can have an army bigger than the one waiting for us outside. Someone looked up at Oakley. Is that not worth the risk? Ronnie shook her head. No, they said coldly. Oakley frowned. It might be. Simon smiled. To escape into the tree, I will have to fully merge my body into it. To summon the Skald, I merely need to touch it with my hand. Simon looked directly at Marianne, then back at Oakley. You could be ready with your gun again if you believe I'd do. You can be ready with your gun again if you believe I've decided to double cross you. If you believe I've decided. Oak looked at Ronnie. Could that work? Ronnie nodded. Yes, the interface process is not immediate. The tree spirit coexists with the human brain, so the only way Sam could reintegrate with the tree is if Claire was fully absorbed. We would have time to prevent that. Oakley nodded. How do we know you won't use your Skald to attack us? Simon gave a mirthless laugh. Do you have any automatic weapons? Is there a problem with the frame rate, or is it just my internet? No, it's just my internet. What's going on? Hang on. Oh well, I'm recording it so I can upload it to YouTube without any of the issues. And how do you know you won't use your Skald to attack us? Sam gave a mirthless laugh. Do any of you have automatic weapons? We do, Oakley admitted grudgingly. Skald are made from the same material as the tree. Automatic weapon fire would rip them apart. Oakley looked across to Ronnie. Is that right? She nodded. Oakley looked back down to Simulf. Why are you suddenly willing to help us? What is going on? I just need to check something. Oh, it looks normal now. Why is someone to help us? Because I will die if I don't, said Thomas honestly, and because a faintly embarrassed look across the face. I cannot bear the thought of responsible for the death of Marianne. They are truly noble. Also, I'd have to break the news to Mackenzie, for whom Marianne is the light at the end of a very long and dark tunnel. Sam gave a slight smile. Marianne is the light at the end of a very long and dark tunnel. Sam gave a slight smile. I also admit that I have a deep affection for Idrisil. I must also confess that I have a deep affection for Idrisil, they finally admitted. We are different creatures with opposing views and beliefs, but also ancient and have coexisted for millennia. I can't imagine never interacting with them again. I'm sure they would share the sentiment. Someone's face went slightly pink as though they were a child admitting their attraction to a fellow pupil in a playground. We don't like change, they said quietly. Oakley looked to Ronnie. What do you reckon? Is it worth the risk? Ronnie nodded. It's not a risk. Simon knows we'll kill them if they try to escape into the tree, and the school can be controlled with guns. We should try. A handful of school could dispose of the army, or at least very least distract them, leaving it safe for us to get Claire to the safety of a network tree. She smiled ruefully. Oakley nodded. I'll arrange for Vickers and Charvar to be issued with machine guns. Simon nodded. Quickly, though, your army could attack at any time. We know, stated Oakley sarcastically as he rushed away. We are ready. Ronnie gestured to Vickers and Charvar, who each stood before a tripod-mounted machine gun, the same type that Matthews was operating on the roof above the west door. Both weapons were pointed at the tree. Samwolf had been moved to the surgical bed and was lying down with her eyes closed. Marianne was standing by the bed, watching them with concern. Everyone else was at the far side of the arboretum, away from the direction that any bullets might fly. Marianne helped Samwolf down from the bed and walked them carefully into the tree, staring at the weapons with distaste as they led Samwolf past them. Simon stepped up to the tree. Their arm wobbled as they raised it. This should only take a few moments, they said. I will touch the tree for a few seconds, telling it to release Scald. Simul's hand touched the surface of the tree. The flesh seemed to raise itself around the hand without absorbing it. Vickers and Charvar pointed their weapons at the trunk, ready to open fire if Simulf or the Scald did anything aggressive. A moment later, Simulf lowered the hand and took a step backwards, almost stumbling. Marianne caught them just as the surface of the tree bulged. A moment later, a thin figure stepped from the tree, immediately followed by another. It stood. As before, they had Mackenzie's features. Simulf looked at Ronnie. I've asked them to obey Idrisil's ambassador. Give them your instructions. Ronnie nodded at Vickers and Charvar, who pointed the guns away from the Scald into the floor. Scald, remember everybody currently in this room. Nobody here is to be harmed. Then you will go outside into the forest. You must be careful because there will be men with weapons such as these trying to destroy you. She gestures. Gestures? There you will ask Idrisil for more Scald to assist you. Then you must kill any humans in the vicinity. Shaw stepped forwards. Can't we get it to pass on the message from Simewolf here? Simewolf shook their head. They will only accept instructions of the magnitude of my message. They will only accept instructions of the magnitude of my message. Just unnecessary. They will accept the instructions of the magnitude of my message firsthand. I must personally get to a tree outside. Ronnie nodded. The school walked quickly and quietly to the other end of the arboretum. There they walked amongst the rows of people, examining their faces. Kendra looked anxious as the wooden creature gazed at her, but did nothing to stop it. Finally, they walked over to the door and through it. Ronnie followed them and watched they walk through the tunnel to the door that led to the western exit. One of them opened the door, and suddenly the two creatures dashed into the gloomy forest. Ronnie wanted to watch them as they ran, but Vickers closed the door and pulled her away and back to the arboretum. Matthews received the morning message from Oliver Shaw moments before the wooden figures dashed from the door beneath him and ran through the clearing towards the woods. He just had time to bark "Hold your fire" to his companion, and by the time they'd finished speaking, the Scald had vanished. Into the trees. The first one to reach the tree placed its hand on the surface of the bark. There was a rippling beneath its wooden fingers as the request for assistance from their master was passed on. Then it stepped away and took a few more steps until it was... Then it moved away. A few more steps until it was standing next to its counterpart. They both waited silently. They did not have to wait for long. Three of the trees surrounding them discorded further Scald. One was large and introduced two of the taciturn wooden warriors. The new beings joined the first two. There were now 6, all indistinguishable from the original. The Scald waited for another 3 minutes, during which another 17 of the silent creatures joined them. Then, simultaneously, they all ran forward. What do you see, over? Matthews lifted the radio to his lips. The two ran into the clearing, one stopping to touch a tree on the way. They waited for a bit and they were joined by more Scald, a lot more. I don't have an exact number, but there are about 24 now, I think. They've just moved forwards out of my sight. Over. Matthews looked at the forest around him and at the hundreds of trees. He smiled. If each tree was a potential Scald, then surely they could easily overwhelm the army with a capital A. There could be an unlimited number of Scald, I assume. if we needed them. Over. There was a pause and some static could be heard over the radio. The next voice that crackled over the tiny unit was not sure. It's Ronnie, there has to be a balance. Many of these trees are deciduous and don't have especially voluminous trunks. When the tree releases matter to create scald, it reduces the overall substance of that tree. Most of the trees capable of releasing scald are the same trees that we can hibernate in. Too many scald released nearby will drastically reduce the number of trees close by that we can escape into. So if they're scald destroyed and everyone able to return to the host tree at the end of all of this. Understood, over, replied Matthews. There was another pause. What can you see now? Asked Ronnie. Not all that much, replied Matthews honestly. Can't hear anything either. The sound of a pair of gunshots suddenly echoed around the forest. Correction, I hear gunfire. The scald must have engaged the enemy. Can I come up and watch? Ronnie asked over the radio. Matthews shook his head. No, not safe. Over. There was a pause. Then Oakley's voice came over the airwaves. Yeah, good luck with that. She's on her way. What the hell is that? The fresh-faced army private was looking out into the woods ahead of him. He could see movement, but it was not accompanied by the sounds usually observed when someone was approaching. He was kneeling, looking towards the area where he had seen something, his gun pointing ahead of him. Behind was his commanding officer, Lieutenant Carstairs. The man was in his early 30s, and that's a deliberate Doctor Who reference, by the way. There's a Lieutenant Carstairs in a Doctor Who story called The War Games. Behind him was his commanding officer, Lieutenant Carstairs. The man was in his early 30s and one of 4 of his rank in this newly formed unit. Each officer was in command of 15 soldiers. They had divided the perimeter into 4 zones, and Carstairs was in constant communication with the other platoon commanders as well as Captain Hughes, who was in overall charge. It was an unusual job, this one. None of them knew each other. They'd been thrown together yesterday and given an abrupt briefing for their mission. Carstairs disliked not knowing the way his commanding officer worked or how the soldiers in his command acted in a given situation. They'd done some group training sessions in a facility yesterday, so he had an outline of the strengths and weaknesses of each of his men, but it was not like working with his usual squad, whose behaviours he could predict, which under normal circumstances he could use to his advantage. What do you see, Private Bradbury? Bradbury was concentrating furiously on the woods ahead of him. Looks like a group of people moving in on us, sir. They're all wearing the same colour. Do they have weapons? I can't tell, sir. Carstairs waved at the 2 men who were on the nearby part of the room. Carstairs waved at the 2 men on the nearby part of the perimeter. The rest of you spread out. Collier, Walker, with Bradbury. The 2 young men walked over next to Bradbury, pointed to where he'd seen the movement. They knelt beside him, their weapons drawn, and pointed in the same direction. This is Cypress 1 calling Evergreen. We have movement in the trees. Could have come from the western exit of the compound. There was a brief pause before Captain Hughes' voice crackled into his earpiece. Concentrate your men. Fire 2 shots. The rest of us will spread out. Acknowledged. Carstairs looked around him and specifically to where the 3 soldiers were pointing their guns. There seemed to be no movement now. Cypress 1 to Cypress. All join me immediately. He could see some of the men to his left and right moving towards him, and he knew that beyond them further soldiers would be rushing in his direction in order to obey his command. After a couple of minutes, all of Cypress' platoon were kneeling on the ground, the guns pointing to where Bradbury had indicated. Bradbury piped up. Sir, I saw another movement. Carstairs grinned mirthlessly. 2 shots, Bradbury. Straight at where you saw them. Then wait. If the enemy makes their presence known, take them out. Aye, sir. Bradbury looked down the sights of his gun, pointed at where the movement had been, and squeezed his finger twice. 2 shots rang through the forest. Everyone watched carefully. There was no further movement. Carstairs stepped forwards, so he was standing behind Bradbury. Wait for it. Suddenly, 24 wooden figures could be seen running towards them. It was exactly as they'd been told in the training, wooden mannequins with a full range of human motion. Several of the men had laughed at the description. It did not seem so funny now. The air rang out with multiple shots as 15 soldiers started to fire at the oncoming creatures. Where are they? Yelled Bradbury. He fired towards the figure advancing directly towards him, but it seemed to make no difference. He could see his bullets either bouncing from the surface or embedding into their skin, but the advance was not halted at all. Each creature focused on one of the soldiers, running up to them despite being fired at directly. As each man shot at a creature at point-blank range, every skull grabbed a soldier by the throat and started to squeeze. There was a sudden silence. The men, immobilised with wooden hands clutching their throats, looked around at each other. It dawned on all of them simultaneously, although they were being held by the throat, and that things undoubtedly had the strength to snap their necks, they had not yet done so. Carstairs looked into the face of the creature that was clutching at him. It had proper features. It looked like a wooden sculpture of a human being, although he could see that it was not a real person because it was not breathing. Are we all okay? Is anyone hurt? Carstairs asked hoarsely. All of the men answered that they were okay. Just going to lose that. Carstairs looked into the eyes of the thing that was holding him and noticed it was not blinking. As well as a creature straining each man, there were 5 or 6 standing nearby, impassive, seeming to glare at them. Carstairs tried to manoeuvre himself slowly away from the hand that was holding him in place, but the creature took a step close to him and tightened its grip a little. Shakily, Carstairs raised his hand to his earpiece. Cypress 1 to Evergreen. We've been incapacitated by the tree creatures. Incapacitated? Hughes demanded. They're holding each one of us by the throat. If we try to move, they tighten. How many hostiles? 21. 1 holding each of us, 5 just waiting. What happens if you shoot at one of the 5? I don't know, sir. Set your guns to automatic fire and shoot simultaneously at the same Skald. A drip of sweat rolled down Carstairs' face. Yes, sir. He gestured to the creature standing impassively on the left of the group. The one on the left. All concentrate on it. Automatic fire. On 3. The men raised their weapons, expecting the pressure around the necks to increase, but nothing happened. 2. 1. 2. Carstairs took a painful breath. 3. 15 guns fired simultaneously. The target Skald did not stand a chance. It was ripped to shreds by the bullets. Piles of kindling fell to the forest floor. There was silence again for a few moments. Next one. The same, barked Carstairs, his confidence increasing. Fire. Once again, concentrated machine gun fire ripped the Skald to pieces. The soldiers aimed at the next one, and soon all 5 lone Skald were no more. Cypress 1 to Evergreen. We have destroyed the 5 enemies that were not immediately restraining us. There was a pause as Hughes digested this news. No resistance? No, sir. Try shooting at a Skald that is restraining one of you. Aye, sir. Carstairs looked around him. The soldier who was at least risk if they fired at the creature restraining him was Bradbury, who was on his knees. We will now try and take these ones out, one at a time. Bradbury, raise your hand. They did not all know each other's names yet, and Carstairs wanted no mistakes. Shakily, Bradbury did as he was told. Aim, said Carstairs. Fire. The bullets exploded into the creature that was holding Bradbury. It fell apart, its hand loosening before falling away as the body disintegrated. Bradbury immediately jumped up and started scanning the woods around him. None of them had any idea about how many more of these things there might be. Carstairs chose another man, this time Private Collier. They all fired, but this time as the creature disintegrated, its hand tightened. Collier let out a brief shriek as his neck broke and he fell dead to the floor as the creature fell apart. Cypress 1 to Evergreen. We have successfully freed Private Bradbury. However, when we shot the creature restraining Collier, it killed him as it died. Hughes' response was immediate. Deliberately, or some kind of reflex? Carstairs shook his head. No way to tell, sir. Free another. See what happens. Good luck, Lieutenant. Thank you, sir. He scanned the men in front of him. Walker had a gung-ho attitude to life and death, or at least he appeared to. Time to find out if that was a front or not. Private Walker, raise your hand. Sir, yes, sir. Walker's arm shot up without hesitation. Ready, said Carstairs calmly. Aim. Fire. Ronnie was sitting on the roof above the west door with Matthews and his colleague. The gunfire seemed to be constant now, with the occasional respite of a few seconds. It says 4, but I'm going to change that to of. She looked across at Matthews with concern. What do you think is happening? What do you think's happening? What do you think's happening? Matthews shook his head. I've no idea. It sounds like a pitched battle. Matthews shook his head. No, it's single coordinated bursts, like they're taking out one Skald at a time. Roddy nodded. That makes sense. I wonder how many of the soldiers are left. Matthews shrugged. How will we know? Roddy took a pair of the binoculars on the floor next to her knees and scanned the tree line. One of the Skald will eventually report back. There was a rustling by the tree line and a Skald darted through. It was swiftly followed by a soldier. Matthews glared at the man next to him, but he was already on it. He fired the mounted weapon, and the soldier fell dead to the ground. Ronnie frowned. Bloody hell. I'm hoping that was a coincidence, but... Hoping what was a coincidence? Asked Matthews. That soldier was Yakunda. The Skald can't kill Yakunda. Matthews looked down. I don't believe in coincidences. Ronnie shook her head. Neither do I, she replied from behind the binoculars. She looked carefully along the perimeter of the woods and around the complex until she saw another figure. Shaking her head, she lowered the field glasses. Shit, was all she could think to say. Another Yakunda. Ronnie nodded. There is no way that 2 of them would be Yakunda unless it was by design. The Skald can attempt to restrain them, but they cannot kill them. Many of them may be destroyed in the process, which will reduce the number of trees available for the designated survivors to interface with. We've only got one option left. We need to get everyone together in a single mass now, with Claire in the middle, and push outside until we get to a tree large enough for her to interface with, and hope the Skald can keep the army occupied long enough so they don't kill all of us before we can get her there. Dun dun dun. Okay, happy with that. But I am tiring now. What's the time? Yeah, I think I'm probably not going to do the last chapter tonight. Or not now. Maybe later, but probably not. So let me just export as a Word file. Desktop, please. Has it remembered this time? Yes. Okay, and Grammarly. Yay, so it's going to be 98% overall score. That's very good again. Yeah, I don't know if this is transmitting still. Let's just have a quick look at this. Yeah, that looks like there's problems with my internet today, which is very unusual. Never mind. Should have had that on typing view. Sorry, I didn't. Never mind. That was very boring to watch. So there's the edited version of chapter 38. Let's just quickly open it. Copy it. Paste it in. Right then. That's chapter 38 signed off. Wowza. Which only leaves me 5. That's quite impressive. Now I do have another one that I could do now, but I'm finding my conversation is wavering. For example, I just left it on completely the wrong view for anybody to be able to see what I'm doing, so that's going to be a very dull video, especially the bit when I was doing Grammarly. So yeah, it seems to be transmitting okay now, but there have been patches through this where it hasn't. However, the YouTube version, which I shall put up shortly, will be okay. So I think that's me done for today, certainly for now. I'm actually going to go and watch this. So I've been recently re-watching Doc Martin, and this is a Christmas special. I think it's hour and a half, hour 40 that went out. I think it was filmed as part of Series 2 and went out after Series 2, the Christmas after Series 2. So I'm going to watch this because I like it. I've just bought the last few series because I had, I think, the first 7 series on DVD, but never got around to buying the last 3 or the finale. So I've now got those. So I'm kind of slowly working my way through them. But that'll do. And as I say, if I'm in the mood, I shall be back later tonight. If not, I shall try and sign chapter 39 and maybe 40. Because I have read through chapter 40 a few times, and that's not far from sign off either. So I might do another 2 tomorrow. We shall see how it goes. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye bye.